Hello, everyone. I'd like to say a few words about the transformative art and architecture courses. Some of you may be wondering, well, should I do this course? What can I get out of it? What's it all about? And today I'd like to say a few words about it more in a general sense. I'll come back to the specific one that's coming up about the creative process. But I just wanted to, I think it's important to say a few general things first. Now, I remember many, many years ago, and back in the days as a young man when we were still in the process of starting a Waldorf school, I attended a business seminar. And because when you start a school, it's a bit like starting a business. There's lots and lots of things that you have to take care of. And I don't really remember a thing that I learned from that seminar, except one thing. There's one thing that the teacher told us, which I've never forgotten. And what the teacher said is, in every business, there is a very important distinction to be made. He suggested you make a list of all the things that are urgent. And then on the other side, you make a list of all the things that are not urgent. And then when you look at the things that are urgent and you look at the things that are not urgent, you will find that all the things that are urgent are not really important in the long term. Whereas the things that are important in the long term, they're rarely ever urgent. So, for example, in the short term, you have to fill in forms, you have to pay bills, you have to create policies, you have to deal with customers, and so on, parents in the school. Yeah, these are all short-term things on the to-do list. In the long-term list are things like, what's your vision? What's the direction in which you're heading? Is everything going well? See? And questions like that, they're never urgent, yet they are crucially important. Because if you get something wrong on that important side that's never urgent, that will actually, in the long term, threaten your business. And interestingly, Rudolf Steiner says a similar thing in a completely different context. When he gives exercises that we can do in order to help us in our spiritual development, in the process of growing spiritually. I suppose you could call it self-realization. And one of the exercises Rudolf Steiner suggests is in the evening, before you go to sleep, he suggests it's a really good idea to go back over the day that has just passed and in your mind distinguish the important from the unimportant. Think of all the things that happened during the day and again, make two lists. Make two lists. On one side, all the things that ultimately are not important. On the other side, you put all the things that actually they are important. And it's the same distinction between long-term and short-term. You see, you'll find all of the things that seemed important, look, 5 years from now, they have paled into insignificance. Whether you've paid a particular bill or not, or got in touch with a particular customer or something or other, whether you did your ironing, your shopping, whatever it is, in the long term, these things are actually very unimportant. So the question is, on the important side, often very insignificant things that when you contemplate about it, it's a fact that you've started a conversation with someone you've never talked to for a long time, or you smiled at someone in the street, or you picked up a bit of rubbish somewhere. In some respects, it makes us feel on the inside that's important. But why is it important? And that's a good question. What is the criteria that we can use on the basis of which we can make that distinction that what's important in our life and what's not important? And that all comes back to our worldview. What are the ideals, ultimately, that we strive towards in our lives? Do we ever consciously sit back and ask ourselves, well, what is my worldview? Do I know where I come from, where I'm going? Do I know anything about humanity? Are we alone in the universe? What's our purpose? Why does nature do what it does? They are very important questions. And what should I make my priority in life so that I can live a successful, fulfilling life that not just meets all the outer utilitarian requirements, but it also meets the criteria that help me progress on an inner level, on a level of the maturation of my soul. And so what are the ideals that we may strive towards? And that brings me back to the ancient Greek civilization. There's a lot of things that came out of ancient Greece that we value greatly. Think of democracy, think of Euclidean geometry, think of Aristotle's logic and philosophy, and so on. Think of the great three philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And what these three philosophers had in common was the ideals, that they held more high than any other ideals. And what were those ideals that, if you like, created the shining light towards which Greek civilization seemed to strive? Those three ideals were the ideals of goodness, truth, and beauty. And it's very interesting. Those three ideals somehow seem to belong together, because if something is good, it also really needs to be true, because if it's not true, it can't be good. But then if something is both good and true, then automatically it is imbued with a degree of beauty, even if it's only inner beauty, if the outer beauty doesn't yet has penetrated through to the outside. And so in the ancient Greek world, and this then became the ideal of the classical education in the Western world, all through the medieval ages, right until relatively modern times, the ideal of education was to lead young human beings towards recognizing and grasping the ideals of goodness, truth, and beauty, so that we could see and recognize goodness, truth, and beauty when we see it out in the world, that we see it within ourselves, when we realize those qualities within ourselves, and that we learn what to do practically in our world to bring these ideals to fruition. And so, sadly, when you look at education today, that's no longer the case. I'm pretty sure there's hardly anywhere in the world today where you still find that the curriculum and the teachers have in the back of their mind the task of leading the children towards the recognition of goodness, truth, and beauty, except for the Waldorf schools. Because Rudolf Steiner brought this impulse towards spirituality in a new way. And what is the most unusual thing, and what we have to be most grateful for, he was able to bring that spiritual perspective and unite it with something very, very practical. And so now, when you think of the things that Rudolf Steiner set into motion, such as biodynamic agriculture, Waldorf education, anthroposophical medicine, anthroposophically inspired art and architecture, now you have a coming together of that which is both important in the short term and important in the long term, which actually helps our everyday lives in a very practical way. And at the same time, it is contributing to the transformation of the world and to the transformation of ourselves as human beings. And so if you were to ask, if I go to a TAA course, what do I get out of it? Like, what skill do I learn? There's nothing like that where it's a particular thing that you can put in your CV. I know now how to do this, that, or the other. That's not what it is all about. It's about consciousness. It's about learning to recognize spiritually, where is my spiritual center? Where is humanity heading? Where am I going? A new way of looking at nature, while at the same time developing practical skills, such as, for instance, in this forthcoming module, where we look at creativity, where we look at nature, and we look at the processes, how plants grow, and how that can be transposed into our human creative processes. So when we look at the different plant stages, from the seedling to the leaf, the bud, the flower, and we can look at it all the way. We could look at that all the way around the 12 months of the year. Each one of those particular steps is communicating something of an archetypal nature. We've got the four symbols here of warmth, light, movement, form, or the four elements, the fire, the air, the water, and the earth elements. And so by looking at the yearly plant circle, we get a very, very different, deeper idea of what this creative process ultimately is all about. And so that is the practical thing that you're getting from the module, like understanding how are we creative? And that is very important in life, learning how to be creative, how creativity works, because nothing new could ever come into the world if it wasn't for people being creative. And so we just normally think that, well, some people are, others not. It's not something that you can really learn. No, that's not the case if you understand how it works. And importantly, also, if we understand what the difference is between nature and nature's creations and humanity and human creations. And the biggest difference, if I can preempt that here, lies in just a single word, and that's the word freedom. Because you see, nature's creations are not free. A daffodil will always produce a daffodil. A pumpkin seed will always produce a pumpkin. In that manifestation process of nature, there's no freedom. But we as human beings, we have that freedom. And so for us, it's both. It's creating something that's completely new and at the same time manifesting something that follows the same process as it does when we look at nature. And in that, we are transforming ourselves by being creative, and we're transforming the world by bringing, guess what? We're bringing goodness, truth, and beauty to bear in all the practical things we do in life. In this case, in our courses, specifically connected with art and architecture. But insofar as the qualities of goodness, truth, and beauty really need to be brought into all spheres of life, it goes much beyond art and architecture. And interestingly, that's one of the reasons, it seems, why in the courses that we've been running in China now for the last 7 years, very soon we started to experience that people came to those courses who were not necessarily specifically connected with designing, with art or architecture. We found people from all walks of lives, Waldorf parents, entrepreneurs, business people, therapists, teachers. What did they all come for? They came for the understanding that the TAA course gives them about the spiritual connection between humanity and the world, between us as individuals and the things that we do in the world and how we transform ourselves in the process. It's all about transformation. And so the best thing to think about, whether you should be doing a TAA course or not, is really have a think in yourself whether you actually want to focus on just the things that are important in the short term, or whether you want to invest some time to engage in the things that right now do not seem urgent, but that are extremely important in the long term. And that importance concerns each one of us individually, and it concerns the world at large to the extent that we're able to transform our culture and civilization and bring spirit and matter together in the way Rudolf Steiner taught us how to do. And so with that in mind, I invite you to join us, and I hope to see you there. Bye-bye.